After over 15 years of LEGO Castle, a king emerged, bringing with it a brand new lion faction. Let's dive into the story of the Royal Knights on this episode of Tavern Talk. In 1992, LEGO began shifting into a new era for its castle theme, which was marked with darker tones. This transition was most noticeable with the introduction of the Dragon Masters, which essentially was a replacement for the Black Knights. However, in 1995, LEGO introduced a new faction to succeed the Crusaders, the Royal Knights. The Royal Knights are identified by their faction shield, white and red with a blue trim, featuring a crowned lion at its center. This shield is similar to the ones from Knights Procession. Since its introduction, this lion head has appeared on other Lion Castle factions. If you look at the Denmark coat of arms, there's a lion with a crown on the head, which might explain the LEGO company's obsession with lion factions. Like the Dragon Masters, the Royal Knights offered a variety of torso designs, though in this case, they reverted to simpler designs, reminiscent of the Black Falcons and Crusaders with solid colors and emblems. While I appreciate this nostalgic style, it was a bit disappointing after the intricate designs introduced in the Dragon Masters line. The same torso that both Black Knights and Crusaders used reappeared in this line. For archers, a white torso with blue arms was used. These first two figures were always paired with a classic smiley face. Another look was red with white arms that was always paired with the same head we saw in a few figures from Dark Forest, Wolfpack, and a bunch of pirates. We also got a knight in this line that used a red torso with black arms and had a red helmet with a black visor. The central figure of this faction is the Royal King, also known as King Richard. His detailed red and white torso featured a lion's head, a belt, and even collar printing, making him stand out compared to the other figures in this line. Richard also marked the debut of LEGO's Chrome Crown, which became a recurring feature in later sets. There were 3 different versions of the king: a basic version with blue legs and a crown, another with white legs and a feather plume, and his final form found in the largest set of the wave, complete with cape, crown, and horse barding. The king is central for all the lore surrounding the Royal Knights. But before we delve into the lore surrounding King Richard, let's take a look at the sets from this line. The smallest set in the wave was a polybag released under a few different names: Boat with Armor, Crossbow Boat, and Thunder Arrow Boat, which, let's be honest, is the coolest name. This set pairs perfectly with the Royal Drawbridge, which we'll look at later. Another notable set was Royal King, featuring King Richard himself on horseback. This was a standout set because just for a few dollars you could get the King minifigure, which was similar to how Magista was available in the Dragon Masters line. This affordability made it easy to build an army of mounted knights by simply swapping out the crown. And speaking of the crown, you get 2 chrome pieces in this tiny set, which is just amazing. The Royal Knights had their only siege weapon in a special value 2-pack set that featured a catapult and a Spyrus ship. While the catapult design was similar to earlier castle sets, it felt more realistic and came with extra weapons and shields, which was a nice touch. The next set in the Royal Knights line is Skeleton Surprise, which is a small outpost. The whole set is based around the main play feature. If you pull this lance out that's on the right side of the build, a skeleton drops from the ceiling, scaring away potential intruders. If you get past the skeleton, there's a small room with a goblet in it. The top of the set has battlements to place a minifigure. Overall, I do really like the simplicity of the set because every kid wants some sort of castle-like structure to play with. It honestly feels like an improvement to Black Monarch's Ghost. Now, I have the instructions for this set, and I wanted to point out a really interesting detail in it. Early Royal Knights instructions had the green dragon symbol. I think LEGO did this because for a time they might have wanted to use this dragon as a symbol for a LEGO castle. Later on it was changed to the Royal Knight symbol, but it's definitely interesting. Make way, because rolling up is the next set, King's Carriage. The carriage is made out of yellow and blue parts, which gives it a very royal look. During its time, this set would have been a great battle pack. I mean, you got 3 knights and a king, which could be easily made into a knight. Also, this set came with a cloth banner and 2 horses. A part that I think is notable is the 2 white lances on the side of the carriage. I do like that all the figures in this set can fit on the carriage. The second largest set in the wave is the Royal Drawbridge. When building this set, you first assemble a small raft that is used to defend the bridge. An archer can hide behind some foliage to shoot enemies who try to cross the bridge. The set has a few different play features. First off, the front ramp can be lifted up to reveal a prison cell with a skeleton. The back ramp reveals a treasure chest, which is another area that can be used as a prison cell. The middle section of the bridge can drop, throwing attackers into the water. This is done by pulling this leaf piece away. Because the bridge is held up by this part, it does make it pretty weak. There are also 3 platforms to put defenders. It's cool you get 2 extra pikes and shields, which are used for decorations. Unlike all the other sets from this wave, this set includes an enemy in the form of a mounted Dragon Master. If you couldn't afford the castle, this was a great set if you wanted a castle-like structure. The final and largest set of the wave is the Royal Knight's Castle. There is so much to talk about with this set, but I want to start with the minifigures. First off, you get 2 archers, 2 spearmen, 2 swordsmen, 2 knights, and finally the fully kitted out king. On top of the Royal Knights, this set came with a ghost and a skeleton. The king also rides on a white horse with the Royal Knight's horse barding, which only came in this set. Another special part this set came with was a large and small Royal Knight's flag. I always appreciate when castle sets have extra weapons, and this set definitely supplies a whole arsenal. There are 6 extra shields and 8 weapons that are used as decorations. The castle itself is very large and on top of a one-of-a-kind raised base plate. A funny part about this castle is it just has like a Black Monarch's ghost just slapped on the front of it. Like, these doors do not lead to anything. They just seem to like be there as a decoy or scare tactic. Unlike basically every castle set we have gotten, the front gate does not have a drawbridge. Instead, it has 2 large doors. Behind them is a portcullis you can drop into place. I do like this because not every castle had a drawbridge as the front gate, yet LEGO always includes one. Around the front gate are a lot of battlements to place defenders. If an attacker was able to get past this front line of defense, you can activate the skeleton to scare enemies. This is something we see a few times in the Royal Knights line. The use of the dead to scare attackers, which, you know, is a little messed up. The front gate isn't the only entrance to the castle. There's also a drawbridge on the right side of the castle. We have seen a drawbridge in many sets, but what makes this drawbridge different is the fact it's on an upper level and doesn't just lay flat on the ground. There is something else that makes this side drawbridge so great. If you had both the castle and the royal drawbridge, you could actually connect them together. The bridge on the castle is the perfect height to land on the drawbridge. Putting these 2 sets together just looks absolutely fantastic. I can't find anywhere that LEGO advertised that these sets were supposed to be displayed like this, but it definitely feels like the designers did this on purpose. Also, next to this upper drawbridge is a staircase that is built into the base plate that leads to a trap door. There are many other play features inside the castle. In the back tower is a throne room for your king to sit. If he has, let's say, an unwelcome guest, you can pull a pin and a trapdoor drops them to the level below. Another defense the castle has is a small catapult on the front of the castle. It rotates 360 degrees and uses a pot to hold projectiles. Below the ramp to the upper gate is a prison cell. There are bars in the front to look into it, but you can lift up the ramp to get more access to the cells. Next to the prison is a feature that's so simple but an amazing detail. There is a well that is made up of 5 pieces. We don't usually see this kind of lifestyle stuff in classic castle, which is why I appreciate this detail so much. The back of the castle has a low wall, with a dual crossbow mounted to it. It even has these doors for dropping stuff on attackers. Overall, this set is very front heavy, but since this set is meant for kids, it's perfect. Like, it is very easy for a kid to stick their arm in the castle and play around with the different features. The walls in the back even slope down on purpose to allow for this. There are a couple of part usages I just want to quickly point out in this set. The first is these octagonal columns that are on top of the towers. They just match the design of the castle so well. Also, these gargoyles that are on top of the towers. They are simple, but just look so good and add some character to this set that we didn't see in previous castles. The Royal Knights did appear in a few other sets outside of their line. In Dark Forest Hemlock Stronghold, 2 Royal Knights are ambushed while transporting treasure. They also appeared in the Fright Night series, particularly in Night Lord's Castle and Trader Transport. The latter includes the exact knight figure from the Royal Knight's Castle. The final set they appeared in was this random LEGO Dactica castle set that featured both Fright Knights and Royal Knights. For those wondering, Dactica was the original name for LEGO Education. Before we move on to the lore of the Royal Knights, if you've enjoyed this video and want to know more about LEGO Castle, hit that subscribe button, and check out the rest of my Tavern Talk series. These other appearances of the Royal Knights help connect the lore of these factions. We find the lore of the Royal Knights in different media. In a UK Bricks and Pieces magazine, we find out that the Royal Knights are located in a land called Saxondale. There is a real-life location called Saxondale where there's evidence of an Anglo-Saxon fort. This is something that LEGO does a lot of in LEGO Castle, where in Europe and the UK they'll name stuff after historical or mythological characters or places. It's why in the UK the Royal Knight's king is called King Richard, after Richard the Lionheart, and the castle was called King Saxondale's Castle. This was to appeal more to that audience. In LEGO Racers on the map Royal Knights Raceway, we got to see what the kingdom of the Royal Knights looks like. The map features a large castle with characteristics similar to Royal Knight's Castle. castle. We also see fortifications for the Black Knights, which connects the Royal Knights to that faction. In this game, we also see the king, who is called the Royal King. In many magazines, we see that the environment of the Royal Knights castle is similar to that of the Dragon Masters. This is backed up in the LEGO Fun to Build video game, where we learn that the Dragon Master's castle sits on a nearby mountain to the Royal Knight's castle. I love this part of the game where it shows both factions in 8-bit art. Like, can we get more of this? After you get past this first screen, you rebuild the King's Carriage. It then shows Magisto taking control of some of the Royal Knight soldiers. King Richard then proceeds to save them by working his way through the castle. He then battles Magisto to retake control of his knights. Battling Magisto is a major storyline of the early years of the Royal Knights. In the adventures of the Lego Maniac, Magisto kidnaps King Richard and throws him into his dungeon, only for the Lego Maniac to come to the rescue. Time Buster's comic strip shows King Lionheart saving the Time Buster from a dragon. The Royal Knights retreat to their castle and prepare their defenses before being besieged by the Dragon Masters. During the fight, Magisto stuns the king with a spell. He wakes up later to the Dragon Masters surrendering. We would also see a similar battle take place in a LEGO commercial.
There's this chap with a crown, probably a king, all lined up for a fight with a chap with a blue hat. There he went. Oh, you missed him, probably. But anyway, cue skeleton. Excellent, well done. There is old blue hat. Well, there was old blue hat. Will you capture the Lego castle?
Fun fact, in the LEGO Chess video game, you can find the Royal Knight's castle in the background. After the surrender of the Dragon Knights, the Royal Knights would fight a new foe, the Dark Forest, led by Robin and Hood. We don't know much about these battles besides what is seen in this one magazine. This was very similar to the Crusaders vs. Forestmen storyline we saw in early LEGO Castle. Even though it seems that the Dark Forest became a constant pest to the Royal Knights, eventually the Royal Knights would go up against their fiercest foe yet, the Fright Knights. In another LEGO Maniac comic strip, King Richard walks into the Magic Manor to take cover from the rain, but is trapped inside. Willa ends up imprisoning the king, but with the help of the LEGO Maniac, the king escapes using the Witch's Windship. In 2024 was the most recent appearance of the Royal Knights. In the medieval town square, if you look into the painter's shop, there is a painting of the Royal King. This directly connects the Royal Knights to the Black Falcons and the original Lion Knights. Overall, Royal Knights is a solid line of castle sets. There are some areas it's strong in and some other areas it's weak in. Sadly, the cloth elements for Royal Knights are not as common as they were in Dragon Masters. Like, you could get the cape and flag in cheaper sets, whereas in this line, only the castle came with the larger elements. An issue the Royal Knights has is a problem we see in many castle sets from this time period. Besides the Drawbridge, the sets don't have any opposing factions. This means that if you want to have battles, you need to buy Dragon Masters or the later Dark Forest and Fright Knight sets. Another weakness many people point out is how many big parts are used. Yes, this line uses a lot of big parts like other sets around this time, but each set from this line is really solid. They are not only great individually, but at the same time they look amazing all together. The sets match so well and really build out this kingdom. That ends this chapter on the Royal Knights. I hope you enjoyed this tale. Till next time on Tavern Talk.